On my wedding day, I did not arrive at the Hawthorne Hotel in a white bridal limousine. I arrived in the back seat of a dusty black rideshare sedan. The pristine limo was parked right out front, its doors decorated with fresh white roses and pale silk ribbons. But my fiancé had just given my seat to his female best friend. My jaw tightened as I watched her lift her phone to film her grand arrival. The air inside my rideshare smelled of stale pine air freshener and old vinyl, a suffocating contrast to the sweet lily fragrance of my ruined morning. Before I explain how I ended up on the side of the road, watching my own wedding drive away from me, we have to go back to 7 o'clock that morning. The morning sun cast a cold, sharp glare across the hardwood floor of our Boston apartment. I stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, carefully smoothing the heavy silk skirt of my custom bridal gown. The fabric felt cool and smooth against my fingertips. Outside, the engine of the white limousine idled softly on the street below. Ethan stepped into the living room. He adjusted his cufflinks with quick, impatient movements. His polished, leather shoes clicked against the floorboards. "Helena, take the black sedan idling behind the limo," Ethan said. His voice was casual, as flat as if he were reordering a side dish at lunch. "I already booked another car for you. Just get to the hotel a little later." I froze. The crisp rustle of my dress stopped. "What?" Ethan pointed out the window without looking at me. "Let Veronica take the limo. She needs it." I walked to the glass and looked down. Veronica Scott was already sitting inside the bridal car. She was wearing the ivory reception dress I had chosen for my evening party. The silk shimmered under the morning light. One of her hands rested on the open door frame. Her other hand moved rapidly across her phone screen, her thumb flicking up to refresh her social media feed. When she noticed me staring from the window, she tilted her head and smiled. Her voice drifted up, light and mocking. "Don't look so nervous, Helena. I'm not stealing your wedding. I just don't plan on ever getting married. And I wanted to know what it feels like to ride in a bridal limo." Ethan let out a long sigh. It was the heavy, irritated sound a parent makes at a child who refuses to share a toy. "It's only part of the ceremony, Helena," Ethan said, his voice dropping into that familiar condescending tone. "After she gets to the hotel and films her arrival video, you can ride in it too." I had heard that exact tone too many times over our 8 years together. Because Veronica did not believe in marriage, she was allowed to try on my veil before I did. Because Veronica was never having a wedding of her own, Ethan allowed her to critique my flower arrangements, my venue lighting, and my catering menu. They had known each other for 20 years. Whenever I expressed discomfort, Ethan labeled me insecure, jealous, or ungrateful. Ethan walked down to the street. I watched through the window as he crouched to arrange the train of Veronica's dress inside the limousine. He closed the door gently. At no point did he turn around to look at me. At no point did he ask if I agreed. The white limousine pulled away from the curb. It moved slowly. Through the tinted glass, I saw Veronica raise her phone, shaping her fingers into a heart. Ethan sat right beside her. He looked annoyed at first, but when she turned the front-facing camera toward his face, he leaned close, flashed a bright smile, and played along. Below my window, 2 neighbors lowered their voices. Their words carried clearly in the crisp air. "Isn't that the bride? Why didn't she get in the bridal car?" A few minutes later, my rideshare arrived. The driver was a man in his 50s named Frank. He stepped out, opened the trunk, and paused. He looked at my gown, then stared down the empty street where the limousine procession had vanished. "We're following the wedding cars to the Hawthorne, right?" Frank asked softly. "Yes," I replied. I gathered the heavy layers of white silk around my legs and slid into the back seat. The engine hummed. Frank pulled into traffic. At first, he kept the white limousine in sight. But at the second intersection, the cars ahead accelerated sharply. They cut across 2 lanes and disappeared into the heavy Boston traffic. My phone vibrated violently against my palm. 3 text messages from Ethan appeared on the screen. I told the driver not to wait for you. Veronica wants a complete bridal arrival video, and it'll look weird if you arrive together. Have your driver slow down. When you reach the hotel, don't use the main entrance. Go through the side entrance near the conference wing. She had a fight with someone in Toronto, and she's been upset. Let her enjoy today. Don't compete with her for the camera. I stared at the glowing screen until the bold black letters blurred. Ethan remembered that Veronica was upset about a fight in Toronto. He remembered that she hated sharing attention. He had planned every single detail to protect her mood, her ego, and her online image. He had simply forgotten that it was my wedding day. The traffic light ahead turned red. The red glow washed over the dashboard. The smell of cheap pine air freshener filled my lungs. Frank looked at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes filled with quiet concern. The Hawthorne is still a right turn up ahead, correct? Frank asked. I looked out the window at the empty stretch of asphalt where my fiancé had disappeared with another woman. Inside my chest, a tight knot that I had carried for 8 long years suddenly snapped. The heavy weight in my lungs lifted, replaced by a cold, razor-sharp clarity. No, I said. My voice was steady. It did not shake. Frank blinked in the mirror. No. I looked down at the diamond engagement ring on my left hand. The stone caught the red light of the traffic signal. Please turn around, I said softly. Take me to the hotel, but not for the wedding. I need to get my luggage. I paused. The air in the car felt clean for the first time all morning. I'm not going through with it. Frank did not ask a single question. He shifted gears. When the light turned green, he spun the wheel and executed a sharp U-turn, heading in the opposite direction. I leaned back against the seat. I unpinned the heavy white veil from my hair and laid it flat beside me. I pulled my lipstick from my clutch and painted my lips a deep, resolute red. My hands were completely still. The bridal procession was driving toward a grand entrance, but my real life was finally heading in the right direction. As the rideshare sped away from the bridal procession, my phone vibrated nonstop in my lap. The screen flashed bright with notifications from a private group chat created by Sebastian's childhood friends. Veronica had added me months ago, claiming we were all going to be family. For months, the group had remained dead silent. That morning, it erupted with activity. Veronica uploaded over a dozen photos at once. Her caption read, "Maybe a certain someone will finally realize I can be perfectly happy without him." I scrolled through the photos. In the first few images, she leaned her head against Sebastian's shoulder in the back seat of the white limousine, the exact seat meant for me. In the final photo, she cupped his face with both hands. Sebastian smiled back at her with a gentle, tender gaze that I had not seen directed at me in months. During our engagement photo session, I had asked Sebastian to pose like that. He pulled away and said, "It looks forced. I hate staged pictures." The replies from his friends came in rapid fire. "Finally, you two are walking down the aisle," wrote Mark, Sebastian's closest friend. "I've thought you belonged together since high school." "Helena was always just the rebound he found after you moved away," added Luke, Sebastian's cousin. Then came a message that cut even deeper. "If I'd known the woman who actually looked like the bride today was Veronica, I wouldn't have skipped the ceremony." My fingers grew cold against the glass screen. Mark had once hugged me, thanking me for helping Sebastian rebuild his life. Luke had lost crucial bidding documents during a winter storm. and I had driven through ice to deliver copies, skidding into a guardrail and injuring my knee. Luke had promised he would remember my kindness forever. They did not remember my kindness. In their eyes, I was merely a temporary placeholder. Sebastian finally entered the chat. He typed a single line: "Don't talk about Helena today. Just tell Veronica how beautiful she looks." My hands shook, but I typed my response: "You smile in my face and insult me behind my back. Do none of you find this disgusting? And who exactly is the bride today?" Silence fell over the chat. Then Mark replied, "Damn, wrong group." Sebastian called my phone instantly. There was no apology and no explanation. "Go back into the group chat and apologize," Sebastian demanded. I almost laughed. To whom? The people calling me a replacement, or the woman taking over my wedding? Sebastian let out a heavy sigh. "Helena, not everyone is required to like you. They've known Veronica and me for over 20 years. You came later. So that gives them permission to humiliate me on my wedding day." "Veronica is crying," he yelled, as if her tears explained everything. "She thinks it's her fault you saw those messages. Just tell everyone you don't care, so she can calm down." In that quiet moment, I finally understood the rules of Sebastian's world. Veronica's tears were an urgent emergency. My dignity was just an inconvenience. "Sebastian, we're done," I said. My voice was low and firm. "The wedding is canceled." Through the speaker, I heard Veronica's sniffling voice. Sebastian covered the microphone and murmured to her, "Don't cry. Helena is just being sensitive. She isn't actually going to leave." He even reminded her not to ruin her makeup before her arrival video. He returned to the line, "Don't threaten to end an 8-year relationship on our wedding day. Do you really think you can just walk away?" I hung up the phone. 10 minutes later, Frank pulled up to the hotel. I avoided the grand lobby entirely and took the service elevator straight to the suite. I stripped off the wedding dress, washed the heavy makeup from my face, and packed my passport, laptop, financial ledgers, and clothes into 2 suitcases. On the bedside table lay the prenuptial agreement Sebastian's mother had sent the night before. I know the truth now. Sebastian's company needed a $1.5 million credit line, and the bank required my personal guarantee and financial assets before midnight. He didn't need a bride. He needed my signature. I pulled the diamond engagement ring off my finger. I placed it squarely on top of the unsigned contract. Then I called the city clerk's office and officially revoked our marriage license. I carried my bags down to the curb. My father, Arthur Ross, was already standing beside his old blue pickup truck. The engine rumbled softly in the cold air. His gray hair caught the morning sun. He didn't ask why I was wearing jeans instead of a wedding gown. He didn't ask where Sebastian was. Arthur simply took the heavy suitcases from my hands and tossed them into the truck bed. He opened the passenger door for me. "The house is open, Helena. Let's go home." Inside my childhood home, the living room smelled of fresh coffee and old pine wood. The dinner from the night before sat on the counter, reheated 3 times. On the wooden table lay a crisp cashier's check. Arthur pushed the check across the table toward me. "This is from my savings. It's for you to start over." "Dad, I can't take this," I whispered. Arthur shook his head, his dark eyes fierce and steady. "It is not a wedding gift, Helena. It is so you never stay beside any man simply because you think you have nowhere else to go." I sat at the wooden table, surrounded by the warmth of my family, and felt the heavy shackles of 8 years finally fall away. The next morning, the sun rose over a freezing Boston sky. Inside my childhood home, the air smelled of freshly ground coffee and old paper. I sat at my father's heavy wooden desk with my laptop open. My fingers moved swiftly across the keyboard. As a senior financial accountant, I knew every line, every number, and every loophole in Sebastian's business. I did not shed a single tear. I did not post angry rants on social media. I chose a cold, precise, and surgical response. Beside me, attorney Marcus Lee reviewed the legal documents. His pen clicked repeatedly in the quiet room. First, Marcus filed a formal notice to cancel my proprietary license. For 4 years, Cole Restaurant Group had used my custom cost accounting software and financial management algorithms. The software was registered solely under my name. I granted them a mandatory 30-day transition period. After that, every system in their restaurants would lock down. Second, I walked into the bank and officially revoked my personal financial guarantee. I canceled my backing for the $1.5 million credit line Sebastian desperately needed. Third, Marcus issued a formal demand for all unpaid consulting fees and accumulated dividends. Sebastian had delayed these payments for years, claiming we would settle everything after our wedding. Finally, I opened my LinkedIn profile and published a concise professional statement. Effective immediately, I have resigned from all financial management roles at Cole Restaurant Group and revoked all proprietary technology licenses due to severe breaches of contract and ethical standards. The impact was immediate and devastating. By noon, the news tore through the Boston business community. Financial blog headlines flared up across social media feeds. Investors panicked. The bank froze the $1.5 million expansion loan instantly. Citing the sudden loss of financial oversight and software infrastructure, the investment board suspended all planned restaurant openings. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, a heavy knock rattled our front door. I walked down the stairs and opened it. Sebastian stood on the porch. He was still wearing his wedding tuxedo. The white shirt underneath was rumpled and stained. The sharp scent of alcohol and stale rain clung to his wool coat. His eyes were bloodshot. "Helena," Sebastian gasped, his voice raspy. "You need to stop this madness right now. My investors called. The bank locked our accounts. You're destroying my life over an emotional outburst." My father stepped up beside me. His tall, broad frame filled the doorway. His hands were calloused from decades of hard work at his machine shop. "When you force my daughter to enter her own wedding through a side door, that was your rational decision," I said, my voice as calm and steady as ice. "When you gave your family's heirloom necklace to Veronica, that was your calculated choice. When you demanded I apologize to people who humiliated me, you were perfectly sober. Why is it that, when I reclaim my own hard-earned work, you call me emotional?" Sebastian's face was drained of color. His jaw trembled. "Helena, I know I messed up, but if the company crashes, dozens of employees lose their jobs. Then you should have thought about your company before you treated your chief financial officer like garbage," I replied. I pushed a cardboard box through the doorway. It contained his spare clothes from my car, his apartment key, and his old watch. 8 years were not ruined in one day. "Sebastian," I said softly, "they simply ended on the day I finally saw who you truly are." My father pulled me back and closed the heavy oak door. The lock clicked into place. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping against the window panes. Sebastian stood on the wet porch for hours, but I never opened the curtain. Meanwhile, the scandal surrounding Veronica erupted. The stranger's video of me getting into Frank's rideshare went viral. Netizens paired it with Veronica's public posts. The contrast was undeniable. The public backlash was swift and ruthless. Desperate to save her image, Veronica tried to blame Sebastian. But I had already taken action. I sent a private audio recording to Alex, her ex-boyfriend in Toronto. It was the recording from 2 years ago, the night I lost my baby, when Veronica took Sebastian's phone, laughed into the receiver, and hung up on my cries for help. When Alex heard the cold cruelty in her voice, he released a public statement severing all ties with her. He canceled her brand contracts in Toronto and exposed her history of emotional manipulation. Without Alex's attention, Veronica turned on Sebastian. A leaked voice recording from their argument at the hotel reached the press. "You think I actually wanted you?" Veronica had screamed at him. "You left your real bride on the sidewalk. You ruined your own life, so don't blame me." In less than 48 hours, the illusion shattered completely. Veronica fled Boston in shame, her influencer career in ruins. Without my software, Cole Restaurant Group descended into financial chaos. Inventory went untracked. Kitchen costs exploded. Within 2 months, the investment board staged an internal takeover. They stripped Sebastian of his CEO title, forced him out of management, and bought his remaining shares at a fraction of their value. He lost his company, his prestige, and the penthouse apartment we once shared. Standing by my bedroom window, I watched the rain stream down the glass. The storm outside had cleared the air, and inside my heart, the dark clouds were finally gone. 2 weeks after leaving the hotel, I began my complete transformation. I refused to spend my days lying in bed, staring at old photos, or drowning in self-pity. I took full control of my life, starting with my health, my physical appearance, and my daily mindset. Every morning at 6 o'clock sharp, the crisp, cold Boston breeze greeted me on my daily runs along the Charles River. The icy morning air burned my lungs, washing away the lingering numbness of 8 lost years. I walked into a downtown salon and cut off my long, traditional hair, the soft, trailing style Sebastian had always insisted I keep to look delicate and agreeable. I changed it to a sharp, modern shoulder-length bob that framed my face with clean, decisive lines. I traded my soft, pale wardrobe for tailored navy blazers, dark trousers, and crisp white button-down shirts. My reflection in the mirror no longer showed a tired, invisible shadow waiting for someone else's approval. It showed a confident, radiant woman with clear eyes and a firm, unyielding posture. Next, I focused all my energy and financial acumen on my career and complete personal independence. I rented a bright, brick-walled corner space in downtown Boston with high ceilings and large glass windows. I hired my father's crew to renovate the interior from the ground up. For weeks, the warm scent of freshly cut oak wood, polished brass, and fresh white paint filled the air, completely replacing the stale memories of my past life. Above the large front glass window, I hung a hand-carved black and gold wooden sign, Ross & Co. The business had 2 distinct, powerful divisions that reflected my dual talents and professional vision. On one side, I established my independent financial consulting firm. I used my extensive expertise as a senior financial accountant to help small F&B business owners structure their internal management, streamline their operational costs, and protect their valuable intellectual property. On the other side, I opened a boutique artisan bakery in partnership with my father, honoring our family recipes and technical precision. I spent my evenings studying modern corporate law, asset management, and advanced financial forecasting. I attended business networking events across Massachusetts, building strong professional relationships with local female entrepreneurs, bank directors, and private venture capital investors. I was no longer building someone else's empire in the dark while remaining invisible. I was building my own name in the full light of day. 9 months later, the National Creative Pastry Competition took place at the Boston Convention Center. The grand hall hummed with intense, electric energy. Bright, white spotlights beamed down on rows of pristine stainless steel workstations. The air smelled rich and heavy with melted dark chocolate, caramelized sugar, toasted hazelnuts, and warm vanilla extract. The theme for the final round was weddings. Other competitors built elaborate white sugar castles, intricate lace gowns, and towering floral arches draped in pale silk ribbons. I took a completely different, bold, and unconventional path. I spent 5 intense, focused hours crafting my centerpiece out of dark cocoa, blown sugar, and rich chestnut cream. My entry was a detailed, glossy black rideshare sedan. Through its crystal-clear sugar glass window, a sugar-sculpted woman sat calmly beside a tiny leather suitcase. She had removed her white veil and laid it completely flat on the seat beside her. When the panel of international judges gathered around my workstation, the head judge leaned in close and examined the delicate sugar details with deep interest. "What is the title of this creation, Chef Ross?" she asked, her pen hovering over her official scoring clipboard. "Return Trip," I replied, my voice ringing clear, steady, and unshakable across the silent room. "Why is a wedding-themed dessert about leaving?" another judge inquired, raising an eyebrow with deep curiosity. I looked the judges directly in the eye and smiled gently, without a single trace of bitterness. Because for some people, leaving a wrong wedding is the first time they truly choose themselves. Leaving that car wasn't my defeat. It was my real arrival. The head judge sliced a small piece of the pastry beneath the sculpture, my signature chestnut cream cake, rich and slightly bitter on the outside, and warm, velvety, and sweet at the center. She closed her eyes, savoring the complex, perfectly balanced layers of flavor. An hour later, the auditorium fell completely quiet as the presenter stepped up to the main microphone. "And the gold medal goes to Helena Ross for Return Trip." Applause erupted across the packed hall. Bright flashbulbs blinded my eyes. I walked up to the stage, my heels clicking firmly and rhythmically against the wooden stairs. As the heavy gold medal was placed around my neck, I looked out into the cheering crowd. In the front row, my father stood in his best charcoal suit, wiping tears of quiet pride from his eyes. Beside him, my mother waved proudly, her hands trembling with emotion. The cameras flashed continuously, capturing my beaming, triumphant smile. That night, the award video went viral across national news outlets and social media platforms. Media outlets no longer referred to me as the abandoned bride from the rideshare video. They called me financial strategist and master pastry chef Helena Ross. Standing under the brilliant stage lights, surrounded by falling gold confetti, I felt a deep, unshakable shift inside my mind. I was no longer a victim seeking justice or validation from those who hurt me. I was the absolute author of my own life, standing proudly in the full light of my own success. The cold November rain turned into the first heavy snowfall of the Boston winter. Outside the theater after the awards ceremony, white flakes drifted through the dark night, melting against wet pavement. I stepped out of the warm lobby carrying my golden trophy, wrapped in a thick wool coat. The crisp air smelled of pine needles and fresh snow. My assistant walked ahead to pull the car around. As I reached the bottom of the grand stone steps, a figure stepped out from under a street lamp. It was Sebastian. He was noticeably thinner. His sharp jawline looked sunken, and his eyes were hollow with dark circles. He wore a plain black wool coat that looked too large for his shoulders. There were no bouquets in his hands, no expensive rings, and no arrogant smile on his face. He stood 10 feet away, his boots crunching quietly on the fresh snow. "Can I have 5 minutes, Helena?" he asked. His voice was raspy, stripped of its former confidence. I paused on the stairs, feeling no surge of anger, no racing heart, and no urge to scream. "My car will be here in 5 minutes, Sebastian," I said softly. "You can speak." Sebastian looked down at the trophy in my arms. "Congratulations," he whispered. I saw your centerpiece. Thank you, I replied. Was that the black rideshare sedan from that morning? He asked, his eyes filled with painful realization. Yes, I said simply. It was. Sebastian reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a worn leather notebook. The edges of the paper were yellowed, but the cover was wiped clean. It was my very first pastry notebook, the one where I had recorded my initial recipes, temperature charts, and financial calculations years ago when we first dreamed of opening a shop. He held it out with trembling fingers. This belongs to you, Helena. I found it in an empty apartment. I stepped forward and took the notebook. The worn leather felt cool against my gloves. Sebastian took a shaky breath. After the company was taken over, I went to the hospital, he said, white steam rising from his lips. I requested the medical records from 2 years ago, the night you had the miscarriage. My fingers tightened around the notebook, but I remained silent. I read the doctor's notes. Helena, Sebastian continued, tears welling in his red eyes and spilling down his cold cheeks. There was a window of time. If I had answered your calls, if I hadn't let Veronica turn off my phone, the outcome might have been different. For 2 years, I told myself it was an unavoidable tragedy, because if I admitted the truth, I would have had to face what I really did to you. He wiped his eyes with his sleeve. Snow settled on his shoulders, melting into dark spots on the wool fabric. On our wedding day, I did the exact same thing. He sobbed quietly. I prioritized Veronica's mood. I protected her ego first. I put you last, always assuming you would wait for me. I kept telling myself I loved you, but whenever you truly needed me, I chose someone else. He looked up at me with devastating grief. Helena, I finally understand why you can never forgive me. I ruined us. I stood on the snow-covered steps, holding my trophy and my old notebook. If he had said those words 2 years ago, I would have collapsed into his arms. But now, I felt only a profound, peaceful stillness. I believe that you loved me, Sebastian, I said gently. A tiny flicker of hope sparked in his bloodshot eyes. And I truly loved you, I continued softly. But having loved each other in the past does not erase the real damage you caused. You once carried me through a blizzard when I was sick in college, and I will never forget that kindness. But you also ignored my desperate calls while I lost our child. Both things are true. I cannot use the good memories from our youth as a free pass for every cruel thing you did afterward. The flicker of hope in his eyes vanished, replaced by quiet acceptance. Is there really no chance for us? He whispered. Not even in the future. No, I answered. My voice was quiet, immediate, and unshakable. There isn't. A long silence fell between us as snow fell softly, muffling the city noise. Do you think you'll ever get married again? He asked. I looked down the street toward the bright headlights of my approaching car. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, I said. But if there is a next time, I will never lose myself just to reach the altar. I turned away and walked down the stone steps. Helena, Sebastian called out behind me. I stopped, but I did not turn around. I'm sorry, he said. His voice was steady. There was no plea attached to it, no demand for a second chance, and no request to save his company. It was a complete, selfless apology, arriving far too late to fix the past, but powerful enough to close the chapter forever. Thank you, Sebastian, I whispered into the cold night. I stepped into the warm back seat of my car, closed the door, and watched his lonely figure fade into the swirling white snow as we drove away into my bright future. Exactly 1 year after the wedding that never happened, the flagship store of Ross & Co. celebrated its official opening in the heart of downtown Boston. The late afternoon sun broke through the autumn clouds, casting a brilliant, warm golden glow across the historic cobblestone street. golden hour light reflected off the large, polished glass windows of the shop, illuminating the bustling sidewalk outside. There were no flashy balloon arches, loud banners, or dramatic red carpets outside. Instead, a hand-carved black and gold wooden sign hung beside the entrance, catching the fading sunlight. It bore a single, quiet, and profound inscription: "May you always have the courage to choose yourself." Inside, the shop hummed with warm, vibrant life. The air was rich, inviting, and layered with the irresistible aroma of freshly brewed espresso, roasted chestnuts, dark Belgian chocolate, and warm cultured butter. Soft, elegant acoustic music played gently through the overhead speakers. Bright, polished white marble counters showcased rows of delicate pastries, each one crafted with mathematical precision, technical perfection, and artistic passion. A silver ringing bell chimed clearly above the entrance door. I looked up from behind the counter and smiled brightly. Frank, the kind rideshare driver who had driven me away from the hotel on that fateful morning, stepped inside. He wore a crisp flannel shirt, a dark wool cap, and a warm, recognizable smile. He looked around the crowded bakery in quiet awe before walking directly up to the main counter. "It really is you, Chef Ross," Frank said, his eyes crinkling warmly at the corners. "I saw your national competition video on the news months ago. I kept hoping I'd run into you again. I just wanted to stop by and make sure you were doing okay." "I am doing more than okay, Frank," I replied, my voice filled with genuine warmth, gratitude, and confidence. I handed him a beautifully wrapped golden ribbon box containing my signature chestnut cream cake, Homecoming. Frank accepted the box with both hands and gave me a proud, enthusiastic thumbs up. Making that U-turn on the highway was the single most satisfying drive of my 30 years behind the wheel, he chuckled heartily. "I'm so glad you took your life back." Later that evening, after the public store hours officially ended, my family gathered inside the cozy shop to celebrate my parents' 35th wedding anniversary. Warm yellow pendant lights glowed against the exposed red brick walls, casting soft shadows across the room. My mother wore an elegant silk blouse, her face glowing with peaceful happiness. My father stood near the main cake display, pretending to study the fire safety notice on the wall while secretly wiping away quiet tears of pride with his handkerchief. I walked out from the kitchen, carrying a special two-tiered chestnut cake. The outer layer was lightly dusted with dark cocoa powder, and the top tier was decorated with delicate, hand-sculpted sugar flowers that mirrored my mother's original bridal bouquet from decades ago. Before picking up the silver cake knife, my mother looked at me with exaggerated seriousness. "May I cut this now, Chef Ross?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with humor. Everyone around the wooden table burst into warm, joyous laughter. I laughed too, feeling a deep, sweet bubble of genuine happiness rise in my chest. "Yes, Mom. Now you can cut it." My father served the very first slice directly to me. No one tried to take it away. No one smeared frosting across the walls for social media clout or cheap attention. No one treated my hard work, my talent, or my identity as a toy to entertain ungrateful friends. It was a sacred moment of pure, uninterrupted respect, deep love, and true family harmony. Through the large, crystal-clear glass windows, I watched the evening city traffic move along the avenue. A white wedding limousine rolled past slowly, its doors tied with white silk ribbons and fresh roses. 9 months ago, the mere sight of a bridal dress or a wedding limousine would have sent a sharp, suffocating wave of humiliation and pain through my chest. Now, I looked at it with complete, peaceful indifference and gentle understanding. I was no longer afraid of wedding gowns, romance, or marriage. Other people's ceremonies no longer had the power to drag me back into the dark shadow of my past. I took a slow, deliberate sip of warm tea, feeling the soothing heat spread through my chest and hands. For 8 long years, I had believed that staying with Sebastian meant I had to endure any level of disrespect, emotional neglect, and public humiliation just to preserve our relationship. I had believed that loyalty meant staying invisible in the background, while someone else took credit for my labor and trampled on my dignity. I understood the deep truth now. Time spent together only proves that a relationship existed in the past. It can never prove that a toxic relationship deserves to continue into your future. On my wedding day, everyone who saw me climb in a Frank's dusty rideshare thought I was the abandoned, pitted bride who had lost everything on the curb. They were completely wrong. That crisp morning was not the day I was left behind. It was the exact day I stopped chasing someone else's car, stepped off a painful path, and finally came home to myself. Standing in the brilliant golden hour light of my own creation, I was completely free, unbroken, and fiercely proud of the woman I had become. All shadows must fade before the truth, and every pain is simply the start of a beautiful rebirth. Always remember, the right to write a new chapter of your life is forever in your hands. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below so we know we're walking this journey together. Hope to see you on the next page.